You think it's harmless, just a moment of release, something you do when you're bored, stressed, or alone. But what if I told you this one habit might be silently destroying your relationship, your intimacy, your connection, even your ability to truly love? Most people don't even realize the damage until it's too late. You start feeling distant from your partner. You stop craving real touch, real emotion, real closeness, and suddenly something feels broken, something you can't explain. This isn't just about sex, it's about what happens to your mind, your heart, and the bond with the person you once couldn't imagine life without. In this video, we're diving deep into how this silent addiction is rewiring your brain, weakening your emotional strength, and killing your desire for real connection. You'll also learn what the ancient wisdom of Stoicism teaches us about controlling this urge, and how mastering self-discipline could be the very thing that saves your relationship. Watch till the end, because if you're in a relationship or ever want one that lasts, this might be the most important thing you hear today. When you think about a strong relationship, what comes to mind? Trust, love, passion, connection. But here's the hard truth most people don't want to admit. Those things start to fade the moment you begin replacing real intimacy with artificial pleasure. It doesn't happen overnight. It creeps in slowly, subtly. You tell yourself it's just stress relief, just once in a while, but eventually the screen becomes your source of comfort. Not your partner, not her touch, not her voice. You start to crave the quick dopamine hit of fantasy over the slower, more meaningful connection that real love demands. And before you know it, your heart doesn't race when she smiles anymore. Your body doesn't respond the same way. You're physically present, but emotionally absent. And she feels it deeply, even if she can't put it into words. That spark in your eyes, gone. That natural urge to hug her, kiss her, desire her, fading into the background because your brain has been hijacked by something that was never meant to replace real love. You see, the mind is fragile when it comes to pleasure. When you feed it instant gratification through masturbation, especially when tied to pornography, you begin training your brain to expect reward without effort, connection without vulnerability, satisfaction without intimacy. And in doing so, you rob yourself of the emotional depth that relationships thrive on. You start becoming less patient, less affectionate, less curious about your partner's needs. You stop showing up for her the way she deserves, not because you don't care, but because your inner wiring has shifted. You've conditioned yourself to seek comfort in isolation, not in connection. And this emotional detachment, it cuts deep. It creates space between you two, invisible at first, but it grows. You begin to withdraw during conflicts, avoid meaningful conversations, ignore her emotional cues. The very foundation of your relationship starts to crack, not with a bang, but with silence, with distance, with avoidance. This isn't just a bad habit. It's a form of emotional self-sabotage. It's one of the most common reasons people in relationships feel off without knowing why. It's why some couples go from passionate to passive, from lovers to roommates. If you're constantly turning inward for pleasure instead of reaching out to your partner, you're telling your brain and your heart that she's not enough. Even if that's not what you mean. That's the power of unconscious behavior. And if you don't take control of it, if you don't wake up to what's really happening, you may find yourself holding a relationship that feels empty, even when both of you are still there. Stoicism teaches us that we must control our desires before they control us. If you want real love, deep connection, lasting passion, you have to protect the space between you and your partner, emotionally, mentally, and physically. You have to choose presence over fantasy, effort over escape, and real love over false comfort every single day. There was a time when just the thought of her, the scent of her skin, the sound of her voice could ignite something inside you, that primal desire to be close, to hold her, to explore her, to connect on the deepest level. But slowly, without even realizing it. Something changed. That fire became a flicker. The anticipation turned into numbness. The spark faded, and you started wondering, what's wrong with me? Why don't I feel it anymore? The answer is simpler and darker than you think. When you turn to masturbation too often, especially with porn, your brain becomes conditioned to artificial triggers. It starts craving stimulation that your partner can't replicate, not because she's not enough, but because you've trained your mind to want fantasy, not reality. And over time, the real world starts feeling flat, dull, unsatisfying. This is called porn-induced sexual dysfunction, and it's real. Your dopamine system, the same system that governs motivation, pleasure, and arousal, becomes overstimulated and desensitized. It takes more and more to feel less and less. So while your partner is lying next to you, vulnerable and open, your mind is somewhere else, detached, disconnected, unresponsive. And that moment she notices your hesitation, the lack of enthusiasm in your eyes, the way you're there, but not really there. That moment stays with her. It hurts her more than you'll ever know. Because intimacy isn't just about sex. It's about being desired, being seen, being wanted for who she is, not how she compares to a digital fantasy. When that stops happening, it crushes the emotional safety in your relationship. She starts questioning herself, and you, and the entire connection. And here's the hardest part. Most men don't even know this is happening until the damage is done. Until she pulls away, grows cold, or starts crying during moments that used to bring joy. It's not just about you anymore. It's about how your private habits are bleeding into your shared life, corrupting what was once sacred. This isn't just about sex drive. It's about masculine energy, focus, presence. When you waste your vitality on self-gratification, you have nothing left to offer your partner. No hunger, no depth, no fire. You become a shell of the man she fell in love with. Stoicism teaches us that true power lies in restraint, in using desire, not being used by it. If you want to reignite the physical passion in your relationship, if you want her to feel that spark again when you touch her, you have to rebuild your sensitivity, your energy, your presence. That means breaking the cycle, rewiring your brain, reclaiming your arousal patterns, not through fantasy, but through real-life connection. It means choosing her with intention every time, even when it's hard, especially when it's hard. Because the more you turn away from temporary pleasure, the more room you create for lasting passion. And that's how you rebuild intimacy, not by chasing more, but by learning to desire what's real. Let's be brutally honest. You've probably seen things online that your partner would never do. You've watched bodies that aren't real, situations that are exaggerated, performances that are scripted, and each time you indulge in that world, even just for a few minutes, your mind records it. Your brain begins building a new standard, one that's fake, one that doesn't require emotional effort, conversation, trust, or love. Just image after image of perfectly timed pleasure, always available, never saying no, never asking for connection, and then you come back to your real relationship with its imperfections, its emotions, its depth, and you feel something's missing. But what's missing isn't her. It's your ability to be satisfied by what's real. This is the silent poison of fantasy. It doesn't just change how you feel, it changes what you expect. And slowly, you begin to compare. You compare her reactions to what you've seen on screen. You judge her body, the one she's trusted you with, against filters and fiction. You subconsciously ask her to perform, not connect, to look a certain way, sound a certain way, move a certain way, not because you're ungrateful, but because your brain has been programmed to chase the extreme, the fake, the empty. And that comparison, it kills gratitude. It kills desire. It makes you blind to the very beauty and uniqueness of the woman in front of you. She can feel it, even if you don't say a word. She senses when she's being measured, when your eyes are open, but your soul isn't fully with her. And every time she feels that, a piece of trust dies. Now, ask yourself, how can a real relationship survive when you're living in two worlds? One real, one digital, one intimate, one pornographic, one full of emotional risk, and the other just pixels and control. The Stoics believed that to live well, we must see clearly, not through the lens of illusion, but through the eyes of truth. If you can't see your partner clearly anymore, it's not because she changed, it's because your inner vision has been clouded by indulgence. The constant dopamine spikes, the easy pleasure, the escape from emotional effort. It's addictive, but it's also destructive. It robs you of the ability to love someone as they are, not as they compare to fantasy. If you want to restore your relationship, if you want to reconnect with your partner on a real, deep, and physical level, you have to stop feeding your mind with false expectations. You have to detox from the illusion and relearn how to be present with the imperfect, beautiful reality of love. Because love isn't a performance. It's not a video you watch. It's a commitment you show up for again and again in the messy, raw, and honest moments that no screen could ever replicate. Trust isn't always shattered by lies, cheating, or screaming fights. Sometimes it dies quietly, in silence, in secrets, in small, unnoticed decisions repeated in the dark. Masturbation, when it becomes excessive, private, and disconnected from your partner, starts to feel like emotional infidelity, even if there's no one else involved. Because it's not about the act itself. It's about the space it creates, the emotional distance, the secrecy, the avoidance, the moments where you could have chosen her to talk, to touch, to be vulnerable, but instead you chose isolation. And maybe she doesn't say anything. Maybe she doesn't know the full extent, but women feel things deeply, intuitively. She senses when your energy is off, when your body is there, but your spirit is elsewhere. And over time, even without a single fight, the connection begins to rot from within. She may begin to wonder if she's not enough, if you're bored, if you're tired of her, and the worst part, she might blame herself. She may start changing her appearance, trying harder to please you, feeling rejected without knowing why, all because you've chosen a false release over real vulnerability, a screen over her soul. You don't need to cheat to betray someone. You just have to withdraw, to withhold, to replace emotional intimacy with mechanical relief. And that creates a different kind of heartbreak, one that has no clear villain, just quiet wounds, wounds that show up in the way she no longer reaches for your hand, or the way she turns away when you try to hold her. Stoicism teaches us that character is defined by how we act when no one's watching. So ask yourself, when you're alone, what kind of man are you becoming? Are you feeding strength or weakness, connection or isolation? If you want real trust, you must live in alignment. You must allow your actions in private to reflect the love you claim in public. That means cutting off the secret habits that drain your presence. That means being honest about what's keeping you from showing up fully, not just physically, but emotionally. The work isn't just about stopping masturbation. It's about restoring integrity, becoming someone whose energy speaks louder than words. Someone who doesn't need to say, "I love you," for her to feel it in your presence. Trust isn't built with grand gestures. It's built in the small, quiet choices, the ones you make at night when no one is watching, when it's easier to escape than to connect. And if you can start winning those moments, if you can choose her even when she's not in the room, that's when healing begins. That's when the relationship stops surviving and starts thriving. There's a hidden cost to every shortcut we take. Every time you choose instant pleasure over purposeful connection, you lose something. Something deeper than energy. Something more valuable than time. You lose the fire that drives you, the hunger to pursue, to build, to love with intention. You tell yourself it's no big deal. just a way to unwind, a private thing. But what you don't see is how it's draining your spirit from the inside out. You stop showing up with energy. You stop planning dates. You forget the little things, her favorite flower, her favorite place to eat, the way her eyes light up when you surprise her. It's not because you've stopped loving her, it's because you've stopped feeling enough to act on that love. You've traded action for apathy, touch for screens, effort for convenience, and over time, that pattern becomes who you are. Your relationship becomes routine, mechanical, a shadow of what it used to be. You go through the motions, smile, nod, hold her hand when needed, but the life behind those actions is gone. She feels it, not just in what you do, but in what you no longer do. The way your attention drifts during conversations, the way your compliments feel forced, the way you touch her out of obligation, not desire. That's what happens when you constantly drain your drive on empty pleasure. Stoic philosophy warns against indulgence because it makes men soft, passive, hollow, and nowhere is that more visible than in how a man invests or fails to invest in his relationship. Masturbation tricks your body into thinking you've achieved something, but you haven't built anything. You haven't deepened your bond, or opened your heart, or made her feel cherished. You've simply fed your impulse and numbed your soul. The man she fell in love with, the man who made her laugh, who chased her with fire in his eyes, who made her feel like the center of his world, that man didn't come from comfort. He came from presence, from passion, from purpose. And if you want to bring him back, you have to stop numbing yourself with what's easy. You have to fight for your energy, guard your focus, reclaim your edge. That means turning your back on the fake wins and chasing what's real again. Her voice, her laughter, the look she gives you when you see her, not just look at her. That's the man she needs. Not the man who hides behind a screen, but the man who brings life to the room when he walks in. The man who invests not just time, but heart, because relationships aren't lost overnight. They fade when effort fades, when the fire inside dies quietly. And if you don't protect your motivation, that fire will go out and take everything you love with it. The Stoics believe that the greatest victory a man can achieve is the one over himself, over his urges, his impulses, his unexamined habits that silently rule his life. In a world filled with distractions, temptations, and instant gratification, this idea might sound outdated, but it's more relevant now than ever before, because we're not just fighting to resist pleasure, we're fighting to feel again, to connect again, to live with clarity and intention instead of noise and numbness. And nothing clouds the soul faster than unchecked indulgence. When you constantly give in to every urge, especially in secret, you lose the very thing that makes you powerful, your inner clarity, your discipline, your presence. Stoicism teaches that the wise man doesn't avoid pleasure. He controls it. He chooses when to act and when to pause, when to lean in and when to hold back. And most importantly, he knows that the strongest love is not built on impulse, but on intention. Think about what kind of man shows up for a relationship when he has mastery over his own mind. He's not just reacting to life, he's shaping it. He listens when it's hard, stays calm when it's tense, chooses to be fully present with his partner instead of escaping into fantasy. That kind of man doesn't run from intimacy. He leans into it. He builds safety, trust, and fire without needing constant stimulation to feel alive. Why? Because he's trained his heart to be still, his thoughts to be focused, and his actions to be grounded in purpose, not impulse. When he touches her, she feels the depth of his intention. When he speaks, his words carry weight, not because he's louder, but because he's aligned. That's the power of Stoic self-mastery. It's not about coldness or suppression. It's about channeling your energy toward what truly matters. And in a relationship, nothing matters more than being fully emotionally available, not just physically present, but spiritually engaged. If you're always reaching for easy pleasure, you're telling your soul it's not strong enough to wait, not worthy of something deeper. But when you say no to the urge, not out of shame, but out of strength, you begin transforming into a man of clarity, patience, and passion. You stop operating on autopilot, and you begin living with fire again. That's when your partner begins to trust you on a deeper level. That's when the emotional walls fall, because she doesn't just want you to stop a habit, she wants to feel you again, to see the man who's in control of his time, his thoughts, and his touch, not ruled by secret addictions, but guided by purpose and love. And that journey, it begins when you finally decide that mastery over self is not just a goal, it's your duty to yourself and to the relationship you want to protect.